ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call to order the February 20th, 2013 meeting of the Frederick County Planning Commission. Would you join us in a moment of silence? Thank you. We have no changes to the agenda.
Madam Chairman, move for adoption of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We've got two sets of minutes.
Madam Chairman, move for adoption of the December 5th minutes of 2012.
Second. Second.
It's been moved to approve both sets of minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, time for committee reports, and we do have some. Transportation Committee met, I think, what, yesterday?
Yes, ma'am, we met yesterday, had 3 items on the agenda. The first was a discussion of the private streets in R5 that we looked at DRC back in October, I believe. The Transportation Committee voted to move it forward to the board without any comments. The second item was a presentation by VDOT and Mr. Bishop on the Route 37 work to date. It's engineered drawing showing the approximate limits of the right-of-way that's going to be needed, and they're about 4 to 5 months out from having something for the board to look at and for it to go to public hearing. And then the final item was discussion of the I-81 Corridor Coalition. The committee decided that it'd probably be better for the county to stop being a member on its own. We're already a member as a regional part of it, so that would save us $5,000 a year in dues. That's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Madigan, the EDC?
The EDC did not meet in the month of February.
Right. The Comp Plan Committee did meet. Mr. Moen?
Yes, Madam Chair, Comp Plan Committee met on Monday, February 11th. We had one item on our agenda, which is a comp plan amendment request that was initiated by the board for the light property up in the Northeast Land Use Plan area just north of Brucetown, particularly looking at adjusting the sewer and water service area boundary to enable subsequent entitlements so that they can get it ready as a shovel-ready site for industrial use. And we had some discussion, asked some questions of staff, and it'll be coming back to us next month.
Thank you very much. Did I miss anybody?
Had sanitation yesterday.
Sanitation?
Yes, ma'am. Sanitation Department met yesterday evening. Rainfall for last month was 3.7 inches. It was up from the month before by 2.81, which was good. 3.7 is a little above our average. Water usage from the Deal plant was 1.7 million gallon per day. The Anderson plant was 2.05 million gallon per day. We purchased a little over 3/4 million a gallon from the city. Daily average is about 4.6 million gallon per day, which was up a little bit from last month, but they contribute a lot of that, or some of that, to that they had about 5 house fires in Frederick County, which they figure used a good bit of the water. The Deal quarry stayed about the same elevation at 655 feet. The Anderson elevation rose about 4 feet, which was a good thing. And after all of that, we had a discussion with a lot of the water haulers in Frederick County. There was approximately 15 to 20 people there, and they were really trying to work with sanitation department as to how they could get the hours extended. They want to keep it on weekends and late in the evenings because you got a lot of construction workers that use it for different things, like watering down roads and 81 and things like that when they're working on it. And filling up pools on weekends is a big deal to the water haulers. And people with cisterns and things need water a lot of times when they're not open. And they're wanting them to keep at least 4 hydrants as open if they will. And they're willing to do anything for Frederick County to work with them. They want to put meters on the truck so they can monitor how much water they're getting. And it was a very interesting meeting. It sounded like at the end of it that they're willing to do about anything to the sanitation department to work with them. So hopefully that'll go down good. And that's all we had to talk about.
Thank Thank you, sir. We're pleased to have David Shore from the Winchester Planning Commission with us.
All the way here in the sticks. At our regular meeting yesterday, the Winchester Commission forwarded to City Council a rezoning application for 132 apartment units that would be located on Cedar Creek Grade at the Frederick County line. We also, the Loudon Street Mall was actually regulated by 2 or 3 different offices in the city and the Downtown Development Board. So with an eye towards reopening the mall, they consolidated all the various regulations into one set, and that was all sent forward as an amendment to our zoning ordinance to City Council. And yesterday, as well as many times in the past, we're getting a lot of applications from telecommunications company wanting to either site cellular antennas on buildings or triple the size of the existing installations. And so we've been doing a lot about that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here. While we're on committees, I would like to make some committee appointments, and I would also like to encourage people who are in our audience, either here or at home, to think very seriously about lending a hand and helping us get the job done. We have 2 major committees under the Planning Commission. One is the Comprehensive Plans and Programs Committee, and this is the committee that takes a look at land use into the future. I'm going to shorten the whole description. Land use into the future. We also have Development Review and Regulations, and this is the group that creates the kinds of ordinances that we need to have in order to support that, if you will, vision into the future. And if anyone has, Mr. Ruddy, I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but if anybody would like to join up with us with the Comprehensive Plan and Programs Committee, I invite you to call Mr. Ruddy, who's our fearless leader from staff, and just give him your name. We have a couple of slots that we'd like to fill. In the meantime, let me tell you who is currently on that committee. Mr. Christopher Moan, who's the chairman, and Chris is from the Redbud District, and Gary Oates, who's the vice chairman, is from Stonewall. Paige Manuel from Shawnee District, and Larry Ambrogi is moving over. We're going to snitch him from DRRC for a little while, and he's also from Shawnee. Roger serves as ex officio to that group, and he's from the Pekin District, and I also serve ex officio. Jim Galladay, many of you may remember Jim as having worked in planning for a very, very long period of time. Jim is with us, and he's our history person. He's our anchor. And we have a new representative, Kay Dawson. Kay was one of the people that worked on the Cincinnati Road Eastern Frederick land use plan that was so huge and so wonderful, and we're delighted for her coming with us. And anybody else would like to join up with us, call Mike. Development Review and Regulations Committee members are the following: Mr. Greg Unger down at the end. He is chairman. He's from the Back Creek District. Mr. Kevin Kenny, who's vice chairman from the Gainsboro District. Kevin Croson is from the Back Creek District. Gary Oates serves also on this committee from the Stonewall District, and both Roger and I serve ex officio. Our citizen members are Jay Banks, who is a citizen from the Back Creek District. Mr. Whitney Wagner, also a citizen member from the Stonewall District, and Dwight Schenk, who's a citizen member representing the top of Virginia. And I didn't forewarn Candace either. If you have an inkling that you would like to help this group help the group and initiate your interest in developing ordinances and other things that come before them, is really a fun thing. So Candace Perkins is the fearless leader of that group. Thank you for letting me do that. Okay, this is the spot where we open it up for citizen comments for anything that's not on the agenda. Is there anyone here? Well, we'll close the citizen comment portion. Okay, our first item is public hearing. It's conditional use permit 01-13 for Judy Tingle for a revision to the requirements under the conditional use permit 09-10, enabling an in-home family daycare facility. This request is for the purpose of increasing the number of children being cared for at any given time. The property is located at 284 Tyler Drive and is in the Stonewall Magisterial District. Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. As you may recall, this application was brought to you a little over a year ago. The board ultimately approved it January 2011, excuse me. The illustration on your right is just to remind you guys exactly where the property is located. It is located on the northern part of the county, off of Welltown Road, and fronts on Tyler Drive. It's kind of an overview of what the property looks like. 3 bullet points that I wanted to point out to you guys. The Department of Social Services granted approval to allow Mrs. Tingle to increase the capacity to a maximum of 12 children. The Health Department has no objections to this request, and to date, staff has not received any complaints on the property as it relates to the in-home daycare. Should the Planning Commission find this appropriate, staff would suggest revising condition number 5 as follows. Other than those children residing on the property, there shall be no more than, as you can see, 8 has been slashed out and 12 should be annotated there, being cared for at any given time. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, and Mrs. Judy Tingle is here on behalf of the application.
And any questions of staff? Yes.
The social services permit, is that related to age? Can it be 12 2-month-olds or 12 4-year-olds, or does it matter at all?
From my understanding, when talking with Mrs. Tingle's manager through social services, she will be dealing with children's 6 months to 8 years old.
So the social services 12-year-old permit is not tied to any age at all?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I would think 12 6-year-olds would be a lot different than 12 8-year-olds. Okay.
Anyone else? Question, staff? Thank you, sir. Ms. Tingle, would you like to approach us, say anything to us? Would you come to the mic?
I am licensed for 6 weeks up to the age of 10, and I do have an employee because I'm not that insane. The reason I asked for the capacity to increase is because some of my parents had babies, and they didn't want to go to 2 separate places, so that's why. We had 3 additional new ones this year, so. And the state has already authorized that. I have a letter from Carol at Fishersville, my state supervisor, saying that I'm allowed to have up to 12. And that's plenty. Thank you.
Are there any questions of Ms. Tingle before she goes back? Seeing none? All righty, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to us regarding this conditional use permit? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. See here, we are, any discussion on this? Any further discussion? Mrs. Stonewall.
Madam Chairman, move for approval.
Second?
Further discussion? Mr. Unger?
Unger, yes.
President, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Crockett, yes.
Oates, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Madigan, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Trippett, yes.
Moon, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors on March the 13th. Thank you. Okey-doke. The next item is also a public hearing item. It's an ordinance amendment, Chapter 165 zoning, Article 4, Agricultural and Residential Districts, Part 401, RA Rural Areas District. And this is removing a waiver opportunity in the RA district, which allows the Board of Supervisors to reduce setbacks for existing lots. Mrs. Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. As you stated, this is a public hearing for a waiver removal that currently allows the board to waive setbacks in the RA for existing lots of record when an undue hardship exists. Now, the purpose behind this is to take this waiver and send it to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is the board that should be authorizing setback reductions. So it's a very minor ordinance revision. It was discussed by the DRC back in October of last year, the Planning Commission in December, and then the board at their January 9th meeting where they sent it to public hearing. So tonight we're seeking a recommendation from the commission to send forward to the Board of Supervisors. Glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mrs. Perkins? Well, let's see. I think we need to do something with this.
Madam Chair, I move that we,
Did I do a public hearing? I would like to open the public hearing on this subject. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Thank you, Gary.
I move that we recommend to the board approval.
Any further discussion? Mr. Moan?
Moan, yes.
Trumpet, yes.
Kenny, no. Madigan, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Oates, yes.
Crockett, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Ambrosi, yes. Rosen, yes.
Miller, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This also will go to the board on March the 13th. Our next item is also a public hearing. It's, again, an ordinance amendment, Chapter 165 zoning, Article 8, Development Plans and Approvals, Section 801, Master Development Plans. These are revisions to update the Master Development Plan submission and processing requirements. And it also modifies a number of MDP references throughout Chapter 165 to conform with Section 801 revision. Mrs. Perkins.
Again, thank you. As you stated, this is a public hearing for a number of changes that all revolve around how we process and review master development plans. Now, currently the zoning ordinance, currently the county does not process master plans as outlined in Part 801 of the zoning ordinance. Specifically, the zoning ordinance requires the Planning Commission to make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on plans, and then the Board of Supervisors under the code is required to approve or deny master plans. However, due to the fact that master plans demonstrate compliance with county code, they're not scheduled for review until they have satisfied all all county agency comments, all staff requirements. So they have to be in full compliance before they're even brought before the Planning Commission and the board. So that, due to that, they're only presented as informational items only, and action is not taken on these plans. So we've drafted a number of changes to Part 801 to update the master plan requirements to revise how they are processed, as well as some reorganization of the text for clarity. This was discussed by the Planning Commission back in December, and then the board at their January meeting. The board sent it forward to public hearing. So tonight we are seeking a recommendation from the Planning Commission to forward to the board. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mrs. Perkins? All righty. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this ordinance amendment? Yes, sir. If you'll come forward and give us your name and magisterial district.
That's a good point.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Berg. I'm in the Back Creek Magisterial District, and I want to speak against these changes in Section 801. Kind of disconcerted that the county government has not been following its regulations anyway, and they decide to change the regulations when they feel they can't follow them any further. It turns out that in reading through this new revised Section 801, pretty much this determination of master development plans is going to be left up solely to the director of the Department of Planning and Development and to the county administrator. It actually is only presented even as information to the Planning Commission, who apparently has no direct oversight other than getting the information from these two people. I am very concerned that the Board of Supervisors is not going to have any oversight on this. Just because this meets the plan or the code does not mean there are not going to potentially be other issues that could be impacted and that the Board of Supervisors should have oversight on. And in fact, the Board of Supervisors appoints the Planning Commission, and if the public does not have any say on swaying the Board of Supervisors, what possibility do we have of doing anything with the Planning Commission, or actually with two specific people that are making all the decisions? It says here that the Board of Supervisors won't, of course, have any oversight, but it says that the master development plans are reviewed by the county staff. I would point out that they've been doing a pretty poor job of complying with 801 in the first place, haven't they? There's a lot of things wrong with this. Abusive sections that have been added, things have been added to it that I disagree with. I could give a few. A history of all land divisions that have occurred in relation to the tract since the adoption of this amendment. This is what the developers are supposed to provide, along with ownership, even across the street, figure out what's going on there and what the uses are there. You know, I kind of think that's your job in county government, not you specifically, but county government, it's not the developer to go chase down every single thing that, in fact, the county already has in its records. I think that's abusive to the developers. I think there's other problems with this. It leaves power up to just basically two people. For example, it says applicants shall submit the number of copies, blah, blah, blah. It used to be 42, which is quite excessive, but now it's whatever they deem. And you don't know that until they turn you down and say you didn't put enough copies in of the plan, master development plan. There are not timelines in this, things that have to be done. For example, if this is presented to the Planning Commission and then presented to the board, there is nothing in here about when that has to be done. And you have pre-application forms. There's nothing in here about when that has to be answered. It's very, very ambiguous, very abusive to the developers, and abusive to the county residents. And I would urge that this is definitely not passed, and I'll be speaking more on this in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak to this ordinance change? Anyone? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. This has been dealt with through DRRC, and you heard the comments from our speaker. Are there any thoughts or questions that we should discuss?
Madam Chairman, I recommend approval of the changes as provided.
Second.
Any other comments that we'd like to make? Mr. Unger?
Unger, yes.
Croson, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Crockett, yes.
Oates, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Madigan, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Triplett, yes.
Bone, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors also on March the 13th.
Madam Chairman, I'll need to recuse myself for the next three items.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Our next item is a public meeting item. It's rezoning 09-12 of Clearbrook Retail Center submitted by Gray Wolf Inc. to rezone 14.53 acres from RA Rural Areas District to B2 General Business District with proffers. The property is located 700 feet south of Martinsburg Pike, Route 11 of the intersection with Cedar Hill Road, Route 671, fronting on Route 11 and Interstate 81, and is in the Stonewall Magisterial District. Mr. Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. This is, of course, a continuation from the application that was tabled at your January 2nd meeting. In the Stonewall Magisterial District, just to draw everybody's attention back, of course, to the property. And the property is located in the area that's identified, not with the red, but just north of that, with the black outline. And it has frontage on Route 11 to the east and backs up to Interstate 81 to the west. Just north of the property are several of the adjoining residences, and to the south is the Clearbrook Business Center, through which this project will have primary access. And of course, the generalized development plan that's on the screen to your left is what was included as part of the proffer package, which identifies several of the features that have been proffered with this rezoning request. Back on the 2nd of January, this was tabled to allow a couple of things to happen. The first thing was to clarify the TIA, in particular the level of service and maximum daily trips that were proffered. And it also provided the applicant the opportunity to establish a meeting with the adjoining property owners and work through some ongoing discussions. As a result, the applicant has provided a couple of things, and hopefully the TIA, the clarification in what additional information was provided to you, shows, I think it's on page 95 of the agenda, that the trips, the 5,734 vehicle trips per day that were modeled, is consistent with that which is actually profit as far as number of trips profit. I know that cover sheet which had the trip generation was not part of the package previously, so hopefully that clarification, in addition to the letter that was included with the applicant, provides that. The applicant did modify their profit statement, and I think that was in consideration of what they had discussed with some of the adjacent property owners. So you'll notice that 5B, the future interparcel access, has been added, and 5C, which is the timing of construction activities, 7:30 in the morning till 7:30 in the evening, as a restriction that has been placed or proffered with the application. One thing that was pointed out by staff and discussed before was that the proffer to address some of the transportation impacts was somewhat duplicate from an adjacent project. So, of course, we are aware of the agenda here this evening and rezoning 0113, which is a proffer amendment minor one for the Woodside Commercial Center, is proposing to modify their transportation proffer to address this conflict in the duplicate proffers. Of course, that has not been approved yet, but it's something that still exists, but we'll be discussing that here in the next agenda item. So this evening, we're seeking a Planning Commission recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. We did hold the public hearing at the previous meeting, but I know we have interested folks associated with this rezoning request. So again, the Planning Commission should determine if the transportation impacts have been adequately mitigated, in particular at the intersection of Route 11 and Hopewell, which is where we focused our discussions before. You know, again, the transportation impacts, the applicant has proffered to study and design plans, provide those plans for improvements to Hopewell and Brucetown roads. Recognized, as we just did, the Woodside Commercial Center, and also would like to recognize that the timing for the completion of the plans is up to 36 months. So from the request, there are 36 months in which to complete those transportation design plans. Madam Chairman, I think that at this point, takes care of my presentation. If the Planning Commission has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. I'd also recognize Mr. Tim Stowe is here representing the application. And should we have any outstanding transportation TIA-related discussions, Mr. Bishop has kindly joined us tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ruddy? I have a real minor one, Mike. In your summary for us for this meeting, and it's the last paragraph, we talk about the acceptable level of service at Route 11, Hopewell, and Brucetown is not at what we want. And it says at this intersection, you are referring to that specific intersection.
Yes, ma'am, and of course, the level of service C or better is what the comp plan calls for, and there are a couple of movements where that falls below that. Right. And this intersection being Hopewell, Brucetown, Route 11.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone? Okay. Did you have a question? I heard a deep breath.
No, I'd like to ask Mr. Bishop a couple questions, if possible. Since you're going to answer all of our traffic questions tonight.
We'll see, right?
When you look at the trip generation
Yes, sir.
calculations they've come up with, and you correlate that their build-out is intended to be built out by 2014. I think that's ambitious a year from now, but fine. So if we assume their traffic generation is accurate at almost 6,000 trips a day, and you look at what their proffers are, they're proffering on doing some engineering studies of intersections and improvements at intersections, just the engineering part.
Correct.
But that's not going to be done for 36 months. So we're going to have the traffic, potentially, in 2014. We're not going to have solutions, engineering solutions for our intersections for 3 years, which gets us to 2016. And then if you would do any construction or modifications at the intersection, optimistically, if you did it extremely quickly, it would be a year later. So we have the traffic in 2014. We have the solutions in 2017. Is that what the county wants, or does, from a traffic standpoint, does that appear to be appropriate to you, or would you tell us, yes, it's fine, don't ask any more questions, Roger, and let it go?
There's certainly a bit of a disconnect there as far as the ultimate timing of that proffer. I think what they were trying to do was acknowledge that sometimes the back and forth between VDOT and actual design approvals can be significantly long. I agree with you that 2014 is a fairly ambitious build out, but it is there as a potential number. We have a number of things going on up at the Brucetown-Hopewell intersection, including the current economic development access application. We expect to be doing another one with the new fiscal year this summer. So there's a very realistic and good chance that we'll get us significantly ahead of their timeline as far as that engineering piece. And it's one of those things that we've had as a concern, yes. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Well, somewhat. You're good at evading some of the answers. But if you were sitting on this side of the table and this came to you to vote on it, to do this to the traffic situation up there, knowing what you know, and even looking at a best-case scenario of when the levels of service at the intersections are going to be at what we consider an acceptable level, is this the appropriate time for this? Or even if it's an appropriate time, should we have a proffer that shows a phased-in development instead of getting 6,000 trips next year, which I don't think we'd get anyhow if they build it right away, but should we have a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 that we started off next year at 2,000, a year later 4,000, a year later 6,000? Will the intersections that are there now account for this traffic at an acceptable level? Or are people going to be sitting at those intersections for the next 2 or 3 years at red lights in 30 and 40 car queues that they don't get through in 1, 2, or 3 signal changes?
Assuming the build-out and the actual implementation are as out of alignment as they seem, that is going to be a concern and a problem.
Okay. I know, there's no black and white answer.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to stand here and say what I would do if I was sitting there, because frankly, we're not supposed to do that. But you do identify a legitimate concern, I'll say that. Yes, ma'am.
Do I understand that, it is that the Clearbrook Retail Center will not be developed until the access is possible through the neighbor to the south? Is that correct? That's the only way in. And so there's another element in this application.
That's not my understanding. Now, they would have to go in and build the proffered entrance that the retail center has, but I don't believe they've allowed themselves to be hemmed in by the timeline of that particular development.
All right, anybody else want to ask Mr. Bishop a question? Okay, how about Mr. Tim?
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm Tim Stowe with Stowe Engineering, pinch hitting for Mr. Oates. There were 3 items on the staff report for which this project was tabled last time, and I'd like to address those, and if acceptable, I'd like to come back and address the items that you and Mr. Thomas just raised as well. The first item in the staff report was to clarify the perceived disconnect between the level of service and between the TIA and the proffers. I understand you now have Table 4 from the traffic impact study, which shows where that number of 5,734 vehicles comes from that correlates to proffer number 3. The table also shows the AM and PM peak hour movements of traffic entering and leaving the project. The second item in the staff report refers to providing additional time for the applicant to carry out discussions with the adjoining property owners. So I went back through the history of that correspondence that had been carried out with the property owners. And it went all the way back to May 12th of 2011 with the first letter acknowledging or notifying the property owners that the owner, Mr. Vahidi, was going to seek rezoning of his property. On July the 12th of 2011, a letter was sent acknowledging a neighborhood meeting was going to be held with those property owners. On July 19th of 2011, an offer was extended to the property owners to include their property in the rezoning and to cover the fees associated with that, as well as several other items, about 5 bulleted items. On August 19th of 2011, an additional letter was sent out asking for a response to the offer that was extended to include the properties in this rezoning. On May 16th of 2012, a letter was sent notifying the people that the application was going to be sent in. They were provided a copy of the proffers in the application at that time as well. On January the 8th of this year, following our last meeting when this was tabled, again, a letter went to the property owners, and there were 3 neighborhood meetings that had been held during this same course of time. One was held in early January as well. There was discussion about property, selling property, transferring property one way or the other. Both directions were discussed. My understanding is there were no firm offers or no firm acceptance of those offers that were provided. However, a copy of the generalized development plan and the updated proffers were extended out. And then on January 31st, again, a copy of the updated proffers in response to what we heard here at this meeting was provided to the property owners to address some of the noise issues. So we've gone to quite extensive lengths to communicate with the property owners, to hear what their concerns are, and to incorporate their concerns into the project the best we can. 2 proffers have been added to the set that are before you this evening in proffer number 5. Item B limits the time that the contractor can perform his construction to provide minimal disturbance to the neighbors. The complaint we heard last time pertained to an operation that was working around the clock, and I understand what a hose ram sounds like at 2 o'clock in the morning. Nobody wants that. So what we've done is prohibit that. Item C also provides for interparcel connectors with those adjoining owners so that they can access their property should they become zoned commercially at some point in the future and be able to go through this property and come out in a shared entrance onto Martinsburg Pike that would be further south, thereby honoring the Planning Commission's desires to combine these entrances to the extent possible and minimize individual entrances on Martinsburg Pike. The third item that was in the staff report dealt with the perceived duplication of proffers between this project and another project, which we'll take up in the next agenda item, pertaining to the study, engineering, and design of the improvements at the intersection of Hopewell Road and Brucetown Road. And again, I think you'll see in the next agenda item that that's been addressed to remove that duplication. Now, if I may go back to Mr. Thomas's question concerning the timing of the features. Mr. Bishop hit the nail on the head when he said we anticipated 3 years to get approval of the plans through VDOT. And even if we started tomorrow, we still think it would take 3 years. I would just remind you, VDOT has a 6-year plan that they use for theirs. And sometimes they hit 6 years, sometimes they don't. It's a long process. It's a very involved process from the environmental through to the completion. And that's where the 36 months came from. And Ms. Wilmot, to your item, actually, I forgot what your item is now, to be honest.
My item was the access to this property is through another property to the south.
Yes, ma'am. And then the proffers for that particular property to the south, they did proffer to provide a common entrance, a shared entrance, and they have provided for access through their property for that shared entrance to serve this property. So that is on record with the county.
At the time that Clearbrook needs that access?
Yes, ma'am. And it may end up that this owner has to build that entrance rather than the one whose property it's on.
Thank you.
So, yes, ma'am. I'll be glad to answer any other questions you may have, or
Just, this is an easy question, probably. When you say you're going to provide interparcel connections for the surrounding properties, two of those properties, the Drivers and Martin's properties, seem to be bound by the 2.5 acre no disturbance area. So how would you provide interparcel for those two properties?
the no disturbance area was established to protect their drain fields, which are there now under easements. And what we would need to do is come back and modify that to provide them access through that area. Obviously, this is all predicated on them connecting up to the Frederick County Sanitation Authority's water and sewer system so that those drain fields can be abandoned.
Okay.
Anything else?
Mr. Stowe? Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, we did have a public hearing for this at our last gathering. I would ask if anyone in the audience would like to speak to us regarding these changes. If you'd address the changes, that would be most helpful.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Debbie Driver, live in the Stonewall District and one of the adjoining property owners. I'm still trying to figure out how this rezoning application is better than the last one presented. For the property owners, it's worse because the proffers are offered to us are practically gone. The applicant has offered us easements to this proposed access road. However, we will not have access unless we pay to rezone our properties and pay to replace our neighbors' drain fields, thus putting the financial burden right back on us. Oh, and the applicant did also offer his property to us for purchase for $1,250,000. I mentioned to the applicant's representative, Gary Oates, that I'd like to see him remove the dump site that is located behind the pine trees. I was assured this would be taken care of, and as of today, this hasn't happened. Needless to say, our meeting with Gary Oates was not to benefit the adjoining property owners. This application looks like a standalone puzzle piece. Nothing connected to it makes no sense at this point. I mean, what traffic problems can this particular property create when it has no access to Route 11, Cedar Hill Road, or Route 81? It's landlocked right now. And why would you want to destroy a residential area when all the pieces are not into place at this time? Why would potential customers want to drive through a B3 zone property to shop at a B2 zone property? I've never seen that done. This application is about an investor wanting to make money in Frederick County with no regards to the quality of life for the adjoining property owners. I am asking my Stonewall District representative and the entire commission to deny this application.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to us?
My name's Elizabeth Regan. I reside in the Stonewall District. I'm here this evening to read this letter for Elaine McGee, who's unable to attend this evening. Her letter states, "My name is Elaine McGee. I reside in the Stonewall District. I am an adjoining neighbor of this land. I speak in opposition to this rezoning. I am well aware that some of the members of the Planning Commission believe their duty is to help the developer. Comments at these hearings have indicated this. So why does the comprehensive plan state that the primary goal is to protect and improve the living environment within Frederick County? Excuse me. Rezoning this property does not improve the living environment of residential property owners. When I bought my property, which is zoned residential, I did not expect all this commercial business rezoning around me. I am retired and expect to live here for a long time. Mistakenly, I expected the zoning to protect my property. Now I wonder why I even have zoning restrictions in Frederick County. It's frustrating to see what's happened to the area in which I live. But to get to the point of my concerns about this rezoning, transportation has not been adequately addressed. The land use plan states that Route 11 should be extended to 4 lanes. This has not happened. The light at Brucetown-Hopewell intersection has not helped the intersection. Where there is an accident on 81, the traffic is detoured onto Route 11. Traffic is so backed up that I cannot get out of my driveway. This happens fairly often. Wouldn't it be a good idea to correct these traffic problems before allowing more development to occur? A big construction project on this property is hazardous to the foundation of my house. Blasting could damage the foundation. Who would pay for this? When and if I sell my property, the buyer should have access to the interparcel connection road. If a buyer wishes to rezone, an entrance for a commercial business onto Route 11 would not be possible. The buyer would need to access this property to develop it for business. I urge you, please, to deny this application. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address us? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Vice Chairman, and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mark Regan. I reside in the Stonewall District. My house is adjoined to the north side of the applicant's property on Cedar Hill Road. This application continues to worsen as time goes on. I didn't think there could be an application as bad as the one presented to you back in 2009, but this rezoning application tops them all. At our last meeting, you had asked us to meet with the applicant. We still haven't directly been able to meet with Mr. Vahidi. As of last night, the jackhammer noise at the new warehouse about 3/4 of a mile from me on 4027 Martinsburg Pike continues on. About a month ago, for the second time around at 12:30 a.m., I called the Sheriff's Department again and told them of a public nuisance there, and they woke up my 10-year-old daughter, Jackie, who was in the 4th grade at Stonewall Elementary. The deputy called me back and told me his hands were tied and he couldn't do anything about it. The noise that comes from that construction site is criminal, and it should be enforced as such. It would be intolerable to have this type of noise and construction directly in our backyards at any time of the day. There are a growing amount of issues with this application. There's not enough time to discuss them all tonight. The only solution to improve the living environment for the citizens in this part of the county is to purchase the surrounding neighbors' properties for these types of applications. We are not the ones asking for change. We are not the bad guys. Tonight, during your discussion, just speak of what your Frederick County tax-paying citizens would like to have happen. I elect those that appoint you to represent me, and tonight, every night, I need you to support me and us. All that you have to say at discussion is, I agree with my Frederick County supporters and citizens. You'll probably make the front page of the paper if you do so, and the community television station, Channel 3, might start showing up. Remember, all that you have to do is say, as I agree with my supporters, and that's it. Again, we call on both of our Stonewall District Commissioners to motion for denial and termination of 0912, and for our representatives to support us with a unanimous vote for denial and termination of 0912. Please do the right thing and support us. This application is bad for the county, bad for me and you. Thank you so much and have a good evening. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else at all?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dan Shaw. I'm the owner of 33A125E. I have the same reservations that have already been expressed by those who came before me. I would like to add to that my question, since I'm kind of the new kid on the block, is why are we discussing this if it's already been denied previously? My understanding, briefly, is that the only difference is the access has been moved further down Route 11, so it becomes legal, but it's on somebody else's property. So if we rezone this, there's still no access to this property until somebody else builds an access road for him to tie into. Whether or not that road will ever be built, I don't know, because I don't know if they have any plans to do anything in the near future. That section, as aforementioned, is B3, and you're talking about a B2 small business. Who is going to want to locate, by driving through a B3 zone where, in my estimation, there'll be heavy equipment, mud on the road, lots of noise. Certainly wouldn't want to have a hotel back there. About half the land, as we already discussed, cannot be used because of the drainage easements, well, that type of thing. There are no specific types of businesses being offered to be put in there, and I believe that's because there is no plans to develop it. They just want to get it rezoned so they can sell it, and that just kind of opens up the door as to what will actually come in there in the future. I am not planning to sell my property, and am hopeful that the county cannot force me to sell in the future by whatever legal means they have, simply for the reason that they want to build a connector road and increase taxes. In my opinion, that road will never go through unless you can force me out of my house. That summed up my estimation that this is pretty much a waste of everyone's time because it's been on over and over again, and it's still a bad idea. A lot of aggravation on the property owners' parts who keep coming out time and time again to ask you to please consider the feelings and the taxes that the present owners have been paying for years and years before you destroy some residential area by putting commercial right next to it. My bottom line is, with no access, there should not be a rezoning. Thank you.
Sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chairman, Committee of the Board. As you can see, I don't have a piece of paper, so I'm a little nervous. I haven't talked to anybody this amount of a crowd in a long time, so I just want to say I'm the son-in-law to Mr. Daniel Shaw, one of the partners in the property that bought the place 2 years ago. I am a small business owner here in Frederick County. I pay my taxes. And as we all know, we have to have economical growth to build our county. Looking at the property and the way that everything's zoned, it doesn't make sense. There's no way in, there's no way out. As Mr. Thomas said here about the traffic coming in and out, as of right now, it's horrific. I don't know if anybody lives in that area. I sit on the railroad tracks. You come in at 10, 11 o'clock at night, you see traffic backed up. There's traffic backed up across the railroad tracks. God forbid a train come by, somebody lose their lives. So, we have to look at the traffic, the congestion in the area, and also does it make sense to do something in this area? We look at, what has been built, what is for lease, and what is empty. What do we pay our local law enforcement to look over? The theft has arisen, the crime has arrived, the homeless has gotten higher. So with empty properties that we want to develop, that's just more things that we have to pay our local law enforcement to take care of. So to me, it doesn't make sense. The whole thing doesn't make sense, and I strongly, say, let's deny this. Deny the development, deny everything. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, this is not a public hearing, but we did have a public comment, and I would like to ask Mr. Stowe if he'd like to respond.
Thank you. There were several items that were mentioned that I'd like to respond to and address as appropriate. And I will try to address the comments from each speaker, as there seemed to be some repetition there, and maybe can address those more general. I was perplexed at the irony in the letter that was read by Ms. Reagan, where the property owner wants the rezoning denied, yet she wants the interparcel connection to this property so she can ultimately get commercial uses on her property. So I'm not sure how those two would work together, but that one perplexes me. Mr. Reagan's concern for noise is very real, and the sound of construction all night long, for those of us that work in that industry, know that that's not pleasant if you're trying to get a good night's sleep so you can go to work the next morning. And I don't know if there's anything the county can do about that or not, but that's something that we took serious. And that's why we changed our proffers to make sure that that did not occur next to their home while they're trying to have family time or while they're trying to settle down for the evening. if there's a way to get the GDP up, I would like to explain the access to the property, because there is access to the property that has been, thank you, Michael, that has been established through previous rezonings and proffers that are on record in the land records here with the county. The next parcel to the south has a proffer that says, you can come across my property with an interparcel connector and you can connect out to Middle Martinsburg Pike. And that's what we intend to do. If Mr. Vahidi develops his property first by 2014 or 2015 or whatever the year is, he's likely going to end up having to build that road himself on the adjoining owner's property at his expense. If the adjoining developer gets there first, he may have to build that road at his expense. We don't know how that timeline is going to work out, but that is in place. And so there is access, there is legal access that's established to this property. So to say there's not access is incorrect. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Stowe? Just so I understand what you just said, if the Clearbrook Business Center does not develop before your property would develop, the owner of your property would build that West Loop Drive connection and the Luray Way connection.
Yes, sir. That would be their responsibility. If Mr. Vahidi has a developer to go in there, he's going to end up having to provide that roadway connection for the access to that project.
It's a rather expensive undertaking for.
Yes, sir, it is. And we're hoping the neighbor to the south will get there first.
Thank you.
Comments, questions?
Gene, I probably have one for staff, and I didn't see this until actually Roger brought something up.
Yeah.
On the Hopewell and Brucetown Road intersection, it says it does not meet the acceptable level service C. Explain to me what service level C is. Is that 1 car, 10 cars, 100 cars?
It's specifically related to time delay.
It's 25 seconds.
To the, thank you.
It's like Laurel and Hardy, I think. Mr. Crockett, it's 25 seconds would be the maximum amount of time you'd sit there and still be in the level service C. And there's a lot of variables in there, but it's generally 25 seconds. Just so you know, Hopewell currently has level service E in its delay. So it's out in the, I believe it's in excess of a minute, if I'm not mistaken, in some instances.
I think for the part of the Planning Commission, we need to identify whether or not the issues that we raised last time have been ameliorated. Yes, Mr. Unger.
Madam Chair, after listening to the people that are here tonight and looking at the project, and no more land that's going to be utilized for the project, I can't support this thing. Affecting too many people's livelihoods. I don't see where the county's going to benefit that much from it. It just doesn't appear to be that good of a project to me.
sir. Mr. Thomas?
Back to your question, I think that the developer clarified some of the inconsistencies in the TIA and how it was presented. But the clarification of those discrepancies doesn't get rid of the traffic problem that is there now and is going to be exacerbated by any additional development. Now, you know, we've all been around long enough to know that development's going to occur. But I think it's the timing of the development. And I think this is probably the use, or maybe one of the better uses for this property that somebody could come up with. But I just don't think the timing is right. I think the traffic problems on 11 in that area are bad enough now. And if we do something to develop and put another 5,000 trips there, with the Clearbrook Business Center developing and putting, I don't remember how many more trips there, the problems are going to get a whole lot worse before they get better. Now, in traffic, the problems always get worse before they get better because we never seem to anticipate and solve future problems. We wait till it's been there for 3 years and then go back and try to re-engineer it and solve it. But in the interim, is it reasonable for us to plan and to let something be built that's going to cause that much problems and inconvenience? I mean, right, when we look at this, there's 5 residents that are going to be inconvenienced immediately by their proximity to the development. But how many other 1,000 residents are going to use Route 11, sit at those lights, that are going to sit there and not be able to turn, not be able to get out on the road, and thank us for doing that? I'm not sure I would want to vote positive on this at this time. You know, maybe 5 years from now I would. When there's more improvements to 11, maybe sometime 11 will be a 4-lane road. I just don't think the timing is right on this. Now, I really don't think there's, I would say there's probably less than a 10% chance that this will be developed next year. Because if the Clearbrook Business Center is not developed, I can't see this developer in 7.5 acres of development being able to pay for this connection road and still be profitable with that development. But, you know, that really shouldn't be part of our concern. That's the developer's concern. But I just don't think the timing's right on this, and it's gonna, the traffic problems are not worth the positive. The negatives far outweigh the positives for the county and the residents.
Yes, Mr. Moan.
I would agree with everything that my colleagues on the commission have said thus far. I think to some degree, even with some of the limitations on this, it's a little bit of an open-ended land use equation at this site. And for something that's going to have such a significant impact on existing residents, I do think it's premature given the conditions that have been discussed already, particularly with regard to transportation. I think that it might make a difference in the future to have a better idea of what the use might be there. I mean, frankly, we don't know what the use might be. We just know the 2 uses won't be there. And when we're thinking about something and how a use is going to interact with existing residents and then also contribute to the conditions in the surrounding community, frankly, I just think we need to know more to be able to feel comfortable and confident with supporting development of this site at this point in time. So I would not be able to support this application.
Thank you. Any other comments? Well, this is Stonewall.
Madam Chairman, I think I get the gist of the pleasure of the board here, and I'm afraid I'm in agreement with them. I cannot make a recommendation at this time.
So your motion is to recommend to the board?
Denial.
Are you making a motion?
No,
Yes.
ma'am, I'm not.
Okay, sorry.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion then. I would move that the Planning Commission move for denial to the board of rezoning number 09-12 for Clearbrook Retail Center.
Second.
Seconded to recommend to the board denial of rezoning 09-12 of the Clearbrook Retail Center. Alrighty, Mr. Moon?
Moan, yes.
Triplett, yes.
Kenny, no.
Madigan, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Crockett, yes.
Manuel, no.
Ambrogi, no.
Kevin, yes.
Unger, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors on March the 13th.
I think I said Kevin.
The next item is rezoning 01-13 of Woodside Commercial Center submitted by Greg Wolf, Inc. to revise properties associated with rezoning 08-06. This revision relates to the transportation section of the properties. The property is located on the east side of Route 11 and 3,000 feet north of Hopewell Road, also known as Exit 321 of Interstate 81, and is in the Stonewall Magisterial District. Ruddy.
Thank you again, Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. This one's interesting in that it is so related to the previous rezoning that we just discussed in great detail. It is a very, very basic modification, as you pointed out, and that's Proffer 1E from the transportation section. The property is highlighted on the screen to your left, and of course it is directly across the street from the previous property which was discussed. That was Clearbrook Retail Center in this location. The Woodside project, for which this modification is being requested, is located is again in this area. The duplicate proffer, if you will, that was contained before revolved around the engineering and surveying services for the intersection that we just discussed, the Hopewell, Brucetown, and Route 11 Road. It also included mapping services, again, up and down Route 11 in that area, in an effort to try and advance a solution to the transportation impacts in that area. So what you have in front of you very clearly in 113 is a simple modification, but it is to eliminate the proffer that provides for the mapping and engineering services for the intersection in favor of a $75,000 monetary contribution for actual road improvement construction in the vicinity of this rezoning application. Not only is there a change from the mapping services to a monetary contribution, previously the mapping services and engineering services, the timing of that was at the request of Frederick County. It's important for me to point out that with a monetary contribution, while that may be more fluid, there has also been a timing change for the proffer implementation, and that would be at the occupancy permit rather than when requested by the county. So again, it's a very simple change, 1E, dealing with transportation. The proffer is in an acceptable form with regards to that change. Again, I want to clarify that we reviewed that based upon the change only, and the previously approved proffer content has not changed and is not subject to this review. So we're seeking a recommendation, of course, from the Planning Commission, and I think it's important, of course, to consider what action was just taken on the previous rezoning. If I may offer any further clarification or answer any questions, I'd like to try and do so. But this is not a public hearing this evening because, again, this is a minor modification to the rezoning.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Unger.
Mike, what kind of trade-off is that as far as dollars?
The trade-off, of course, now with we only have the existing Woodside Commercial Center rezoning in place. Okay, so that's the one that was done in 2006. What we have in place is a commitment at the county's request to provide mapping services. So that's aerial mapping, if you will, up and down Route 11, and engineering surveying services for a plan to fix the Hopewell Brucetown Route 11 interchange. That's what we have today, and we have that when the county would request it. The trade-off is to eliminate those mapping services.
I'm talking in dollars. What kind of a trade-off is that?
It's pretty much a wash based upon the information that was provided by the applicant. In your agenda package, the applicant provided several exhibits, if you will, which identify costs that were obtained for those services. So it's fair to say that it would be a wash.
Yes, Mr. Thomas?
The revision to the proffer says for road improvements, and the timing is prior to the first occupancy permit. So with that verbiage of for road improvements, is that restricted to anywhere, any of these intersections, to Route 11, or is it just go into the general road improvement pot?
It goes into, I guess, the general road improvement plot, but applicable to this general area. It has to be in the vicinity of the project. There has to be a nexus, a connection between where the proffer was, the impact is going to be generated. So there's definitely has to be a nexus. It's not something that could be applied in Stevens City. It would be in the vicinity of this area.
Okay, and then the timing, there is no timing for the prior to the first occupancy permit. That could be in 2030, it could be in 2015, so.
Again, to clarify, contributions, the engineering and surveying services identified in the original rezoning will begin prior to the approval of the first site plan or upon request of Frederick County, whichever comes first.
But this makes that the 75,000 is prior to the first occupancy permit, so it's a later time frame.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Mike, if it's a later time frame and it's still a wash, are we giving up something by having the payment paid out later, if you will? You said it was, in answer to Greg's question, that it was a wash. Are we giving up something?
I think you're delaying finding a solution to the improvements that are needed at that intersection.
There is no one else on the hook for a proffer to come up with a solution for that intersection.
There have been a variety, and Mr. Bishop can help me out here too, but there have been several rezonings that have occurred up in that area that have provided in one way, shape, or another some contribution to transportation improvements in that area. The McKesson one being the most obvious example, I think, which was BPG, that they proffered a dollar value based on the square footage. So money has been received that can be incorporated in improvements in that area from that ongoing project.
But no engineering studies. This is the only one that proffered the engineering studies.
That's correct. That's correct. Beyond the the broader studies of that area that have occurred. Let's let Mr. Bishop come on up because he's very active in the northeastern part of Frederick County.
I apologize if I look like I got ants in my pants over there. I don't tend to look real favorably on proffers of study, especially when right now we're fairly actively working on trying to pull in economic development access funds potentially for solutions at Brucetown and Hopewell. The money's a lot more useful to me in terms of trying to move the project forward as opposed to passing off design and engineering to others. My main complaint, if you want to call it that, when I made a review of this particular proffer modification wasn't that they're switching over to money. That gives me some of the flexibility I need to match those dollars up against other pots of money. My complaint had to do with pushing out the timeline. Right now we have a very favorable timeline in terms of basically when we ask for it, we get it. So pushing back the timeline, I like the switching of money. I really don't like this pushing back the timeline because we are trying to move some things forward up there. With the moving forward of the BPG project, they have recently paid a fairly significant proffer, which I'm able to leverage against other dollars and hopefully get something done sooner. So switching this to cash is good, but now pushing off the timeline actually probably puts them behind, hopefully, where I hope to be as far as this project goes.
Yes, Brian.
Mr. Bishop, if you couldn't have your cake and eat it too, where you get the cash and you get it when you want it, which one's more important, to have the cash or to be able to get that engineering done when you want it?
I think the cash is more important. 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 I think
Whatever I can get sooner is going to be better.
Sooner's better.
Frankly. The cash is more convenient, but we'll work with what we get.
Okay.
Any thoughts?
I would just say, it seems, based on Mr. Bishop's comments at least, that while it may be a dollar for dollar wash in terms of the monetary value of what was originally proffered by the applicant and what's being proffered now, it seems to some degree that the cash proffer holds more value for the county. And for that, I think it's probably a good request and a good proposal on the part of the applicant in this case, Mr. Bishop's concerns notwithstanding.
Agree more.
Any other thoughts? Sir?
Madam Chairman, recommend approval.
Second.
Second, I'm sorry. Thank you. It's been recommended, we recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of rezoning 01-13 of Woodstock. Any other comments? Ms. Moon?
Moon, yes.
Triplett, yes.
Kenny, yes. Madigan, no.
Thomas, yes.
Crockett, yes.
Daniel, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Person, yes.
Unger, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the board on March the 13th. We have a public meeting item, subdivision as 06-12, and waiver request of 300N LLC submitted by Gray Wolf, Inc., to create two lots and waiver of subdivision of land, section 144-24, lot requirement C, lot access. The property is located on the east side of Front Royal Pike, Route 522 at 186 Windcrest Drive, and is in the Shawnee Magisterial District. Mr. Chairman.
Madam Chairman, I'll have to recuse myself from this applicant.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. As pointed out, this is a waiver request for a subdivision of a 6-acre parcel into two parcels of 2 acres and 4 acres respectively. If I can turn your attention to the map located on the left on the screen, give you an idea where this the location of this property is at. It's located at 522, which excuse me there. It's on 522 Windcrest Drive. The property the property has been granted a waiver of the master development plan because the property is on the master development plan because it has met the qualifications for that waiver, so that's why it's in front of you today without a master development plan. The requested waivers that you're hearing today, that you point out, Madam Chair, basically the Frederick County subdivision ordinance requires that any subdivision of land have to butt or adjoin a public road. These two properties will not, though. We own Windcrest Drive, which is a 60-foot ingress and egress road, private road, that these two, which would be two properties, have access to 522. I would note that we did have a master development plan for the properties located in the rear. That master development plan required that if any development would happen to the properties to the rear of this property, would have a public road access. I'll also see this is with the orientated the property a little bit sideways to show you where 522 is and what the resulting subdivision will occur there. Again, there's a 2-acre parcel that's up in the front that's fronting 522 and the 4-acre in the back. What staff is seeking two actions tonight is a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors from the Planning Commission regarding the waiver of the public road requirement, and also a recommendation from the Planning Commission for administrative approval authority for a two-lot subdivision. I'll answer any questions that you may have on this proposed waiver request and subdivision request. All the issues or any concerns that are raised on this particular waiver request and subdivision request will be passed on to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Chairman? Yes, Ms. Younger.
In the event that we would pass this and the lot in the back, would they be allowed to build another building back there that would cause traffic problems to come out of 522, possibly another store that would, I mean, can they do that?
Are you talking about the parcel, the 4-acre that's left now on this subdivision, or the remaining property behind?
Well, either one of them. I'm sure the one in the front wouldn't be able to do it because of the size of the lot, but the one in the back may be able to. Can they put another business back there that would cause traffic problems to 522?
The properties to the immediate rear of this 4-acre property right here, and also on the side, Mr. Unger, they are all part of a master development plan that was approved a few years back. If those properties develop at any time, a public road, that'll be, they'll be, it's already been addressed in a master plan as we speak, but it'll be addressed also at the site plan. The two properties that are concerned tonight, just so we have an understanding, is this is the only access that these properties have to 522. They weren't part of that master development plan that was approved.
Okay, I guess I didn't understand the answer. The 4-acre parcel that will be split off has one building on it.
That is correct.
They add a second building onto that parcel and use this access.
They can on this, yes, sir, this 4 acres, yes, sir.
Can they do it without any planning? No, what if they put in a restaurant back there that would cause 500 people a night to come in and out of there?
Again, that'll be addressed at a site plan time for the access.
They have full zoning
Right,
rights.
yeah.
They're zone B3. So if you grant the waiver of the public road, we'll approve the subdivision, so they end up with 2 lots. And any further development on either one of those 2 lots is a site plan exercise. So you won't see it again. It'll be administrative exercise. You meet the code requirements and the restaurant can be built, type thing. So what you're looking at tonight isn't giving them additional rights, it's just allowing them to subdivide it without building that public road.
Subdivide one parcel.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's
So-
what you're asking. It makes sense, but what I don't understand is what if there's enough land back there to do something again that they don't need any permission or regulations from the county? Can they put another building back there and flood the road out there? They can't do further subdivisions without your permission, without the public road, but they can fully develop the property with the site plan approval. Well, you don't foresee a problem with that?
Can it,
They're already entitled to do it. They could develop the property today without even subdividing. Come in with the site plan and fully develop it. It's a by right opportunity. So they could do it anyway? They could do it anyway, correct. Well, that's what I need to know. The only thing they're asking for is a waiver so they don't have to build a public street. Okay. If they wanted to build a public street, we could do the subdivision, conform with the ordinance.
Add to this discussion, does not the site to the north of this property have access to a private road?
Yes. The site, let me jump in here real fast, Mark. The site to the north, which the chairman's talking about, the site up there, it presently uses this right-of-way, which is Windcrest Drive. This property has a master plan that was approved that said if they want to subdivide, they have public road, they have to build a public road. But, their intent at the time the master plan went through was they would use that as a single property. They didn't intend to further subdivide it, so they didn't ask for waivers or anything. Granting the request today would essentially
create two parcels right there. Completely different property owner. But those two parcels would then use a private road known as Windcrest. And if in the future, if the adjacent property owner came in and wanted to do a subdivision, he would either have to build the public road or come before you like we are tonight and ask for a waiver from that public road requirement. Does that help?
Yes. Mr. Croson, you're looking.
I'm a little puzzled. We grant the waiver tonight. The other property could do the same thing. You could develop it, but you wouldn't have to do anything to the road. Am I confused?
You don't have to build public roads, but you still have road standards, so it still has to be built to a private road standard.
Okay.
So it's still going to be an asphalt environment.
Okay, because it's gravel right now, correct?
Yeah. I think it is, yes.
Thank you.
It's a grandfathered site. It's a lumber yard, was there for many years. So if they come in to actually do changes and which requires a site plan, we'll be looking at a road upgrade at that point. But it will be a private road if you all grant the waiver. If they come in and simply do a subdivision and use what's out there, there's no site plan requirement.
Thank you.
Is there permission to do anything?
I guess my thoughts are, I think that the waiver makes sense for this situation here. I mean, they already by right can develop this, and it's, you know, a limited parcel. I mean, the traffic concerns aren't going to be mitigated if we don't allow for the waiver or if we do. So if there's no further discussion, I would make a motion to recommend approval of subdivision waiver for subdivision request 0612.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Ungo?
Yes.
Grossen, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Yes. Thomas, yes.
Madigan, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We have another action to take regarding the administrative approval. Second bullet.
I'm getting ahead of myself here.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a motion, a recommendation regarding the administrative approval authority for the two-lot subdivision of subdivision request 0612.
Mr. Bone?
Yes.
Trumpet, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Madigan, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Crockett, yes. Ambrogi, yes.
Grossen, yes.
Unger, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the board on February the 27th. We have come to the end of our agenda. On the other hand, we have Mr. Lawrence, who would like to make known to us that we've got a very nice set of reports on our retreat.
I don't necessarily want to go through it, but I do want to thank you all on behalf of the staff for attending the Planning Commission retreat a few weeks ago. We've summarized what we heard, and it's in front of you this evening. When you get a chance to take a look at it, if there's any questions, let us know. But we certainly appreciate the comments and the discussions we had at the retreat a couple weeks ago. What we're going to do with two major projects that came out of that, one was the urban center discussion and the other was the business development advancement study. We are going to package those, do some more work on the BDAS, but we'll bring them back to you as a discussion item in about a month at your March 20th meeting. So if you have any comments out of that summary or pertaining to either one of those projects you want us to address before we get back to you on March 20th, let us know. Otherwise, we'll bring it back as a formal discussion and try to put it in a format that can be advanced or cleaned up a little bit more. But thank you for the retreat participation.
Nice job, and the agenda was super.
Thank you.
Any comments to Mr. Lawrence at this point?
Is this
Nope.
Okay. We do have another action since there was insufficient items for our March 6th meeting. We'll need to cancel that.
Yes. March 6th meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
What's this?
what have I forgotten?
Move to adjourn. I move to adjourn.
Yeah.
Canceled the March 6th meeting.
Oh,
So
jeez.
we did.
I retract that.
All right.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Sorry.
They'd read the goddamn.
It's starting to
I
get
guess
old.
when you do, it's probably time to give it up if that starts becoming
Seeing you.
too easy.
That's right.
The last time I was here was when you got it going down the track and I was.
Oh,
I was looking
it?
for-
Is it that, you were looking for little teeth?